Good morning. This is Ron McFarland with Lessons Learned from Team Canada Project 3 in Individual Submission. So today we're going to discuss the recent cybersecurity incident as an overview, the incident response, which contains the containment, the eradication, and notification, the incident recovery, which includes DRP and co-op, disaster recovery, as well as continuous operations, the effectiveness of the current processes, the improvements to be made, and finally a share out with the other FBEY nations and constituents as well. During the recent Global Economic Summit, we experienced a ransomware attack. The incident response team was notified by the user of the inability to access the network resources due to ransomware. The incident response team launched an investigation to determine the cause, which resulted in the identification of a phishing attack that was the attack vector that ultimately infected the computer with ransomware. The incident response team was able to determine the IP address of the source or the attacker and the IP address of the destination, certainly just to verify. They identified the link and the downloaded payload that encrypted the user's files. They decrypted the password to allow for the decryption of the user's files and folders. And no ransomware was paid after the recovery of the files. The incident response, the containment, eradication, and notification involve these 7 steps. Indicator of compromise. First off, the HR coordinator received an Excel file via an email that contained malicious code. The embedded macro script was enabled by the user, and that executed ransomware which locked up the user's files. The HR manager notified the incident response team immediately. The incident response team met promptly to investigate the given incident, to contain the spread of the virus, and to determine the scope of the incident. The investigation team used several tools to identify the source of the attack and how the attack was launched and the impact on the user's computer. The tools used included Wireshark, OPH Crack, and CryptTool to investigate the incident and to recover the password in order to unencrypt the user's files. The security team implemented snort rules in the network as a precautionary measure to notify the network administrator of any future like attacks. The incident recovery included the DRP and the co-op teams based on the processes noted in the IRP procedures that we have. First off, there was an isolation of the event. The user's computer was taken off the network to prevent spreading. Also in our IRP process, an incident response ticket was created to log all information about the incident response. Again, the investigators used Wireshark to identify the source and the destination of the network traffic. And the cryptogram was analyzed using a product called CryptTool. The encryption password within the cryptogram was cracked by using OPH Crack. And ultimately, because the IR team recovered the password for the cryptogram, the user's files were decrypted and no ransomware was paid. As noted before, again, the DRP and the co-op team were notified about the incident. The effectiveness of the current process in general, the IRP procedure worked as planned since the HR manager promptly notified the incident response team and as requested did not shut down the computer. That's part and parcel. The containment of the incident was quick. The IR team promptly responded and then took down the system after they made a quick determination as to what was going on. And they were able to, as we noted earlier, successfully recover the user's files. The IR team completed the response ticket, and at that point, the disaster recovery team, DRP team, as well as a continuous operations team were notified. Some of the technical admin improvements include security controls that failed. The endpoint security failed. The user wasn't notified of what was commonly known as a common ransomware. The SIEM also didn't pick up the security information at Event Manager. And the firewall blacklist did not contain the proper ports and protocols to block that particular ransomware. So improvement of controls, we need to review the endpoint security, the event notification, the firewall blacklist, review the SIEM reporting, and the intelligence gathering of our system. Cybersecurity awareness program failure. Again, while the IRP worked out fantastic, our users still clicked on the link and initiated the attack from there. So we need to do some additional support and training for users regarding that. We've been looking at a product like KnowBe4 as a product that will actually launch an email spam campaign and will take the user to a training resource if they do click on that. Operation system use, we investigated in that department. We have a small number of Windows 10 devices that are basically home edition. We need to upgrade those to the Enterprise edition so we can use BitLocker. Patch management system, we want to review that as well to make sure all of our patches are in place. The configuration management will also be notified because we want to make changes to the SIEM, the firewall, and other the operating system, as well as even replace some of the hardware. And all of those items will go through the change control board in order to maintain our configuration management baseline, which is part and parcel of a good security posture. Other improvements to be made, the IRP procedure, once that is invoked, once we start creating a ticket, the DRP and the co-op teams need to be immediately notified. Right now, at the end of the ticket, they're notified, so they need to be notified immediately. We're looking at a product called Jira that would also invoke that. Review of the incident response procedure. We need to set up some test scenarios in terms of ransomware and other malicious attacks, and even things like if somebody breaks in and steals the server, what will our incident response be? So we want to run through a couple of different scenarios. We want to look at who has what is on the IR team in terms of their email, their phone number, and other contact information to make sure that's all up to date. We want to provide additional cybersecurity awareness training. We want to review user privileges to limit the execution of code based on their GPO. We use Server 2016, so a group policy object would help kind of limit some of that execution potentially. So we're looking at all avenues. Also, we're going to look at the endpoint security. As noted earlier, endpoint security should have flagged this. We're going to see what was going on, whether it was a combination of the Windows 10 Home Edition or some other things that we don't have installed or stood up in our endpoint security. So we're going to examine that. And we're going to implement additional network monitoring beyond what we've already put in place for the immediate ransomware. So in summary, we wanted to share out what with other FBEY nations, what we found, what we discovered, since personally identifiable information was not compromised, we didn't have to contact the government of Canada. Should that have happened, we would have had to have contacted them. So luckily that didn't happen, but we still want to share out with the other FEEY nations the situation with the ransomware. Also the attack vector and what we took in terms of resolution to resolve the problem. And also, right now we're meeting quarterly. That's the plan with the FEEY nations in terms of IT and cybersecurity. We want to push that forward to a monthly meeting for more frequent up-to-dateness, if you will, about these cybersecurity attacks, as well as the more immediate channel of a shared resource such as a private web resource, if you will. So that concludes the incident response, the lessons learned that we went through, and thank you very much for your time.